Professor Oki introduced two types of listening skills. Top-down listening is what's needed to get the main ideas, to get the main meaning of what's being said. Bottom-up listening focuses on the phonology, words, and phrases. Students need to learn both top-down and bottom-up strategies. It's the main ideas that are important to understand what the person is saying overall. It's also important in order to help students understand some of the details. The details themselves are important because a lot of times that's the point of what someone is saying. Details matter, and that's true in both listening and in speaking. Teachers also need to recognize that spoken language differs depending on the register. The spoken language used for business or in public life is different than what is used among friends. And students need to recognize these differences. Teachers need to provide practice listening to different registers of spoken English, and they also need to point out what some of the differences are between oral language across different registers. Professor Oki has already provided some useful concepts about listening. I asked him to specifically give us some ideas about how to teach listening. And here's what he said. What advice do you have for teachers about teaching listening?
So there are many possible things that I could talk about, but I've focused on just a few here. First, it is important that students learn to use as many cues as possible when trying to understand. These include not only audio cues, but ones as well. So anything in the listening context or environment that will help the student to understand better, they need to be taught how to use these things. Second, students need to learn how to adapt to a given speech variety. In our diverse world, we encounter numerous speech varieties. Being able to adapt to a speaker's variety is very important. And what this means is that we should provide students with access to diverse speech varieties in our classes. Students should be given opportunities to listen to each other as well as to the teacher and audio visual material variety of speakers. Otherwise, they may be able to listen and understand just one particular speech variety. It's not going to help them in the world, the diverse world that we live in now. And the third thing that I'd like to mention here is that teachers need to try to select materials that are of interest to students. So this can encourage students to try to listen to such materials outside of the classroom, and this is going to help them to be successful learners. So if we can engage students in things that they're interested in, this is going to help us as they then will take that outside the classroom, and they're going to be learning a lot more when they become motivated to listen on their own.
Professor Oki advised that students should be taught to use as many cues as possible to help them listen, and that refers to both the audio and the visual cues. There's a lot going on, especially when watching a video or talking to someone, that can help students to understand some of the main ideas. Understanding the main ideas, in turn, helps to make sense of some of the details. He also advised that we need to provide students with many different diverse speech varieties in class. And again, we need to point out to students what some of the differences are in different speech varieties. This is not something that they'll necessarily recognize on their own. The different speech varieties are something that they come into contact with the variety of English language media that's available to them today. And another good piece of advice was that teachers should try to increase the motivation for listening by choosing interesting materials, by encouraging listening to English outside the class, and by showing students how to find materials to do so. All of this, of course, is possible when students have access to the internet.